The dock was still wrapped in that early morning hush, the kind of quiet that belongs only to fishermen and the first breath of sea air. Mist clung low across the water, turning the harbor into a ghostly painting of faded blues and silvers. Gulls cried in the distance like old spirits wailing through fog, and the air smelled like salt, gasoline, and damp rope. I sipped my coffee and strolled down the gangway like I did every morning, ready to prep for the day's eco-tour. But then I stopped. My boots echoed against the weathered planks as I blinked. Once, twice. A hollow pit formed in my stomach. The dock was empty. Both my boats, my 25-foot charter boat and my personal speedboat, were gone. The ropes that normally tethered them swayed gently in the breeze, frayed ends whipping like broken nerves. No, I muttered, half jogging forward. I reached down, checked the cleats, the ropes. No sign of a struggle, no signs of vandalism. Just gone. Like they had simply evaporated into the night. I looked up and scanned the harbor. Nothing but bobbing silhouettes of distant vessels, and a few kayakers paddling slowly near the inlet. I reached for my phone and called the marina office. "Steve," I said breathlessly, "both my boats are gone. Did they get towed or something?" There was a pause. "Gone?" he asked, voice scratching with sleep. "What do you mean gone?" "Gone. As in, not here. Vanished. They were locked up last night. I'll check the security cams. Come to the office." I hung up and marched that way, adrenaline rising in my veins like a tide that didn't ask permission. Losing one boat would have been bad. But both? That was my business. My livelihood. My freedom. Inside the office, Steve pulled up the footage with slow fingers and a grumble. I stood behind him, arms crossed, trying not to pace holes in the floor. "There," he said, squinting at the screen. About 4:12 a.m. The grainy black and white feed showed two large, lumbering figures waddling down the dock. They were hard to miss. Broad shoulders, loud floral kaftans, and oversized straw hats that looked like picnic umbrellas. One was carrying a tote bag the size of a laundry basket. The other cradled a mega-sized iced coffee in one hand and a Bluetooth speaker in the other. My jaw unhinged slightly. Steve turned. "You know them?" I did. They'd been around town for the last week, staying at the Airbnb cottage just off the beach. Two sisters, Lena and Sela. Mid-40s, loud as air horns, and big enough to block sunlight when they stood side by side. They'd already gained a bit of local infamy for yelling at a barista over inadequate foam density and scolding a lifeguard for body shaming after he asked them not to swim past the buoys. Now here they were, in the middle of the night, breaking the dock gate, climbing into my speedboat like it was a Disneyland ride, and, God help me, tugging the charter boat along with them. "Are they stealing them?" Steve asked. The video was absurd. Lena shouted something, then threw her arms up like a pirate captain. Sela tossed snacks into the speedboat like it was a floating pantry. They unhooked my ropes, revved the motor, and within seconds, both boats glided out of frame. "They're not just stealing them," I said. "They're making a damn parade." Steve whistled. "Want me to call the sheriff?" "Already on it." But when I called the local station, the response made my blood boil. "Boats weren't reported missing until this morning," the dispatcher said. "It's possible it's a misunderstanding. People borrow stuff all the time around here. Give it 24 hours. I stared at my phone like it had personally insulted me. They're not cousins borrowing a canoe. They're two strangers hijacking thousands of dollars worth of equipment. "Understood, sir," came the bored reply. "But unless there's a clear emergency." "Forget it," I snapped, hanging up. I tried the Airbnb owner next. "They checked out last night," she said. Said they were headed on a sunrise cruise. Paid in cash, left no forwarding address. My blood pressure was about to punch through my skull. I sat in my truck, staring at the waterline, when my phone buzzed with a notification. A friend had tagged me in a Facebook video. I opened it, and there they were. Lena and Sela, basking in sunlight on my charter boat, floating in open water like royalty on a royal barge. Lena was narrating with an exaggerated southern drawl. "Y'all, we are out here on the ocean, living our best lives. Ain't nobody stopping the double Karen cruise, baby. Sela raised her iced coffee in salute. Freedom tastes like salted caramel and adventure. My stomach churned. They were filming it like it was a vacation vlog. Hundreds of views already. Laugh reacts filled the comments. This is someone's boat, right? They gonna get sued? LOL. Living large, literally. I wanted to scream. Instead, I started screen recording everything. Every frame. Every ignorant word. Within the hour, I found more clips on TikTok. Sela had posted a selfie dancing on the speedboat. Her hashtags were a punch in the gut. See Queens, boat day we run this dock. I messaged them both. No reply. I commented, this is theft. Return the boats now before law enforcement gets involved. Lena replied, not to me, but with another video. Oh my God, she said, rolling her eyes at the camera. This random guy is blowing up our inbox, saying we stole his boats. Sir, maybe you should have locked them better. Ever think of that? Sela chimed in, we're making your brand go viral. You should be thanking us. They laughed like mean girls at prom. I sat there, stunned, watching the likes pour in. Somehow, the internet didn't care that it was stolen. They cared that it was entertaining. Then came the next blow. My phone rang. It was a marine biologist friend who worked tours near the reef sanctuary. Hey, he said, voice tight. Are your boats out near Turtle Cove? Yeah. Why? Because one of them just blasted music through a protected zone. Scared off a bunch of nesting pelicans. If it's yours, man, you're gonna catch serious fines. I felt something cold settle in my gut. This wasn't just about property. Now it was about licenses. My business. My record. If these two wrecked something federally protected, I'd be liable. I tried again to call the sheriff's office, forwarded the videos. They said they were reviewing the case. Reviewing? By the time they acted, these floating Karens could be halfway to Cuba. I stared at their live stream again. Sela was trying to figure out how to anchor the boat. Lena yelled, just tie it to a rock or something. The feed shook violently. Then, she looked dead into the camera and said, ain't no man gonna tell us how to sail. The comments erupted. Some were laughing. Others were horrified. I scrolled through them with a growing sense of desperation until one caught my eye. Salty Shore Ranger. Are they near Sector 4? That's a restricted test zone. Someone should call the Coast Guard. I froze. Sector 4. That was a naval testing corridor. Off limits. Patrolled. I pulled up the GPS footage from the video timestamps and started mapping it. They were getting dangerously close. A sick thought slithered into my mind. Let them go just a little further. Just enough rope to hang themselves with. Because if the Coast Guard caught them, this would no longer be some silly joyride. This would be federal. And that would be justice. I grabbed my phone, opened the Coast Guard tip line, and started typing with furious precision. Time. Coordinates. Video links. Live footage. Every piece of evidence I had. Then I added one more sentence. These two women are currently operating stolen vessels in a restricted military zone. Immediate action required. I hit send and waited. The hours that followed felt like standing in the eye of a slow-motion storm. Too quiet, too bright, too still. But behind that calm, I knew something was coming. I sat on the edge of the dock, eyes fixed on the horizon, phone gripped in my hand like a weapon. The Coast Guard hadn't responded yet. No confirmation, no callback, no flashing lights on the water. Just radio silence. But I wasn't idle. Every video the Karen sisters posted, I downloaded and geotagged. I tracked wind direction, water drift, used satellite overlays to estimate their path. I pinged the Wildlife Conservancy, emailed the Regional Coast Patrol, and posted on 2 popular boating forums with full visual documentation. Within 30 minutes, one of the forums exploded with outrage. People from the area chimed in, that's government water. Those women are insane. You need to send this to the feds. I already had. Meanwhile, the sisters were still posting. Lena had made a new video from the deck of a charter boat. She stood dramatically at the bow, sunburnt and flushed, shouting over the wind, when you want adventure, you take it, Queens. You don't wait for permission. Sela chimed in from the speedboat, holding what looked like a soggy sandwich. We ran out of snacks, but the sea provides. She gestured proudly to a bucket that was definitely not FDA approved. The camera panned, and I noticed something chilling. They were near the range markers. Bright orange buoys bobbing in a pattern no civilian boats had any business being close to. Sector 4. The restricted zone. They had drifted there without even knowing. I texted the Coast Guard's public affairs number again. Attached the latest clip. Wrote, "They're entering Sector 4. Still live streaming. Location confirms my earlier report. Please respond." Still nothing. It was maddening. I was watching my boats, my livelihood, float into the jaws of a federal violation, helmed by two buffoonish women who thought sunscreen and karaoke could substitute for navigational training. Suddenly, a notification popped up. U.S. Coast Guard has commented on your TikTok. I tapped it so fast I nearly dropped the phone. They had commented, "We are aware. Monitoring the situation." 3 words, but they were dynamite. The comments exploded. I hit record and posted my own video, voice steady, a little sarcastic. To the 2 ladies who thought stealing my boats and heading into restricted waters was a cute TikTok challenge, the Coast Guard says hi. The video hit 10,000 views in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, back on the high seas of idiocy, Lena and Sela were getting tired. The wind had picked up. Lena's hat flew off at some point, and she blamed toxic ocean energy. They tried to dock on a sandbar and nearly crashed the charter boat into a marker pole. Their next live stream was pure chaos. Lena was panicking, her phone shaking as she screamed into the wind, "We can't get the anchor to hold. It just keeps dragging." Sela, who had stripped down to a leopard print swimsuit, yelled off screen, "The bathroom doesn't work. And I think I saw a shark." I paused the video. The toilet? Yeah, that was a sealed tank. And the shark was probably a drift buoy. But the fear on their faces, that was real. They weren't in control anymore. They were adrift, untethered, and too far out to fake confidence. Then came the sirens. Not from my phone. Not from the internet. From the water. A low, bellowing horn rolled across the waves like thunder. Deep. Mechanical. I looked through binoculars, heart hammering. Out past the reef, a gray silhouette emerged, sharp angles, radar tower gleaming in the sun. A Coast Guard cutter. A big one. It sliced through the water like a knife through silk, closing distance faster than a hawk on a rabbit. I watched as panic erupted aboard the speedboat. Sela shrieked and tried to restart the engine, but the boat sputtered and coughed. Probably flooded. Lena threw her tote bag into the water, thinking it might make the boat lighter. They were shouting over each other, spinning in circles, waving their arms, as if the cutter would mistake them for innocent tourists. Too late. The Coast Guard's voice boomed over loudspeakers. "This is the United States Coast Guard. You are in restricted waters. Cut your engine and prepare for boarding." Lena tried to yell back, "This is discrimination against women of size." The cutter didn't flinch. The next part was both horrifying and deeply satisfying. One of the Coast Guard's smaller boats, a rigid hull inflatable, deployed from the side and zipped over, leaving a white wake like a slash across the water. Within minutes, they were alongside the speedboat. Officers boarded with swift precision. Professional. No nonsense. Sela tried to run. She actually leapt into the water. It was like watching a beach ball get tossed from a pier. An officer fished her out immediately. Another had Lena cuffed within moments. She yelled something about Instagram rights. One of the officers shook his head and muttered, "You're not going to like and subscribe. Your way out of this, ma'am." I watched it all through my binoculars, half in shock, half in awe. They were done. The boats were secured, towed, and the Karens were hauled onto the cutter like 2 overfed fish caught in a net of their own ego. Within an hour, news stations were calling me. I didn't even have to post anything new. People were doing it for me. Clips from the live arrest were circulating. TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, it was wildfire. Someone posted a side-by-side. On the left, Lena yelling, "We're queens of the sea." On the right, her being escorted in zip ties by 2 officers twice her size. Hashtags were trending. Karen cruise crash. Justice floats. Coast Guard versus Karens. Even the local news anchor snuck in a joke. Tonight at 10, two sisters take a quick ride in stolen boats and sail straight into federal charges. But while the internet erupted, I wasn't celebrating yet. The boats were coming back, sure, but I needed to assess the damage. When the Coast Guard cutter docked later that afternoon, I was there waiting, clipboard in hand. One officer greeted me professionally and explained the process. "Sir, both vessels were found in restricted water. Do you want to press full charges?" I looked past him at the sisters, Lena sitting on the dock, head down, Seela wrapped in a towel, sniffling. The confidence was gone. So were the sun hats and iced coffees. Now they looked like two kids caught shoplifting. But instead of gum, they'd hijacked 10,000 pounds of fiberglass and liability. I didn't even hesitate. "Yes," I said. "Full charges. Every last one." He nodded. "We'll take it from here." And just like that, it was over. But as I walked away, my mind was already turning. They thought they could take what wasn't theirs. Laugh about it. Go viral. Well, they did. Just not the way they wanted. And this story? Oh, it wasn't done growing legs. Because while Lena and Seela sat in federal holding, I was about to publish the full story. The arrest, the live streams, the Coast Guard footage. They had set the stage. Now it was my turn to make them famous. The courtroom wasn't what you'd expect for a case involving stolen boats, viral videos, and a Coast Guard chase. It was small, humid, and smelled faintly of mildew and stale coffee. There were no flashing cameras, no reporters swarming outside. Just a few sleepy locals sitting in the back row, and a judge who looked like he'd seen enough ridiculous cases to write a novel. Lena and Seela sat side by side at the defense table, their outfits far less flamboyant now, baggy sweatshirts, loose jeans, hair tied back without their usual loud accessories. But they still carried the same entitled aura, even in handcuffs. You could see it in how they scowled at the judge, like this whole thing was some minor inconvenience in their otherwise fabulous lives. Their lawyer, some guy they'd apparently found on Craigslist, stood with visible discomfort, flipping through a folder that looked embarrassingly thin. Meanwhile, the prosecution laid everything out like a carefully arranged buffet of idiocy. Unauthorized use of private property, violation of protected maritime zones, obstruction, failure to comply with a federal officer, and damage to a chartered vessel used in licensed ecotourism. And then came the videos. There, on a mounted screen, played clip after clip of the Karens on their joyride. Lena yelling, "Ain't nobody stopping the Karen cruise," while knocking over a box of granola bars. Seela throwing a half-full bottle of sunscreen into the ocean, laughing. The moment when they tried to race away from the Coast Guard, and the exact second Seela launched herself overboard with a scream that would haunt me for years. The courtroom didn't laugh. Not even once. The judge didn't smile. The bailiff looked like he wanted to slap someone. When the prosecutor finished, there was silence. Then the judge leaned forward, clasped his hands, and said with the kind of slow, deliberate tone that signals death to arrogance, "You stole 2 motorized vessels, entered a federally restricted area, broadcast your crimes live to thousands, and mocked the laws meant to protect our waters and marine life. Am I missing anything?" Lena opened her mouth, but her lawyer shoved a hand out in front of her chest, stopping whatever nonsense was about to erupt. "Good move." The judge shook his head. "I've seen idiotic stunts before. But this might be the first time someone filmed a crime spree, made it public, and still tried to act like the victim." He gave them 60 days in county jail and a stack of fines that could bankrupt a trust fund. Community service was added. Cleaning docks, ironically. I couldn't have written a better ending myself. But that wasn't the real payoff. The real justice came after. The internet is a cruel, unforgiving place once it turns on you. And Lena and Seela were now branded not as bold adventurers, but as the punchline of a very public joke. Their socials imploded. Sponsorships, yes, they actually had a few small ones, vanished. Even the weird weight loss tea company dumped them. TikTok removed their accounts for violating multiple community standards. And someone started selling t-shirts with a picture of Seela mid-dive into the ocean and the words "Coast Guard don't play." Their faces were meme fodder. In one popular edit, Lena's rant was remixed into a sea shanty that hit 500,000 streams. Meanwhile, my business was booming. I didn't even have to advertise. My story was the advertisement. People came from towns I'd never heard of just to take a ride on the famous Karen Chase boat. Some even asked to sit in the exact seat Selah fell from. I added new merch, caps, mugs, magnets, all branded with real Justice stores. I updated my website with a timeline of the incident, linking to the news articles, the Coast Guard's official statement, and yes, even the viral remix. I kept it tasteful, more informative than gloating, but people loved it. It didn't take long before I was getting invited to podcasts. Even one small documentary crew came through to film a segment on the ordeal. The entire event had taken on a life of its own. I even got a call from a marina in Florida. "Hey, you the guy whose boats got stolen by those two Karens?" "Yeah." Legend. We watched the whole thing live in our break room. They offered to host a satellite branch of my tour company down there. I told them I'd think about it. But not everything was fireworks and profit. There was still the damage. My charter boat had suffered cosmetic harm, scratches along the hull, torn upholstery from whatever party nonsense they tried to host. One of the sonar units had been fried after they spilled soda on the controls. Insurance covered most of it, especially once the theft charges stuck, but I still had to deal with paperwork, inspections, and delays. And the worst part? I never got my old piece back. The dock used to be my temple. Quiet, still, salt on the wind, and gulls overhead. Now every time I walked out, people wanted to talk about the Karens. Every tourist thought it was hilarious. Every kid wanted to see the scene of the crime. Part of me missed the days when I was just a guy with a couple of boats trying to share the ocean. But I also knew the truth. Sometimes justice doesn't come with quiet. Sometimes justice is loud, viral, messy, and sometimes it has to wear a Coast Guard uniform and haul two screaming women off a boat to remind the world that actions have consequences. One afternoon, weeks after the dust had settled, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name and dock number, handwritten on the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of pink notebook paper and a crumpled gift card to a seafood chain. The note read, "Sorry about the boat thing. We were just trying to have fun. Hope this covers something. Don't tell anyone. S." I stared at the note, dumbfounded. Selah. I looked down at the /$25 card, then at the scribbled apology. There was something almost childlike in the way it was written, an afterthought, maybe even regret. But it didn't change anything. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their coupons. I needed the sea. So I put the letter away, grabbed my coffee, and walked back to the dock. The water glittered under the setting sun, and for a moment, everything was golden again. Calm. As I untied the ropes for the evening tour, a couple waiting on the dock asked, "Hey, are you the guy from the Karen story?" I smiled just slightly. "Yeah," I said. "That's me." They laughed. Legend. I nodded toward the boat. "Come aboard. We've got dolphins to see, and this time nobody's stealing anything." They climbed on, still chuckling. As I turned the wheel and pushed away from the dock, I glanced back one last time. No screaming. No stolen boats. No Karens. Just water, wind, and the steady hum of justice, still echoing out over the waves.